Welcome to Documentary First, an inside look at a first-time filmmaker's journey. I'm your host, Josh Lindsay from the Movie Proposal Podcast, and with me is our first-time filmmaker, Christian Taylor.
Hey, Josh.
And with us, as always, is our trusty dusty research extraordinaire, audio note-taker, commentator.
Now he's adding his own titles.
He's got a face for podcasting. Is that what it is?
Yeah, you're right.
No,
Ear candy.
not at all. Ear candy, yes.
Jason Rugg. Hey.
Hey, Jason.
All right, so last time we were together, we were talking about working in the garage of Bill Ebel's house. He is your editor.
That's correct. Lives in Columbia, Tennessee, Muletown to be exact.
Muletown. Just that's outside of Nashville, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. 45 minutes south.
Okay. And so we were hearing about the struggles of subtitles, and we even really haven't gotten to the editing part of it, which is a crucial role. I remember, so I don't know if you know this or not, but I did a year of film school.
I do remember that.
One of my favorite exercises we did is the instructor gave all of us film of what appeared to be a bank robbery. And there are guys with guns, people in a bank, and interactions going on. But then they told us to edit it however we wanted to. And what was so neat was there were probably 10 different films that were made from this exact same footage, and there were 10 very different stories told because of the way people edited it. And so editing really makes the film. But
it does.
But you're not the editor, Christian. I mean, you're everything else, but you're not the editor.
No, I'm not the editor. I do not have the technical capabilities to pull that off. And Bill is crucial. And I will say, Bill is not just an editor, which is exactly why he's a perfect partner for me. Bill grew up as the son of Bob Ebel. If you guys don't know who Bob Ebel is, you should look him up in his work. Look at the Try-On commercials, especially the one where he kicked him in the penis.
That is one of the funniest. Anytime I think of Bill Ebel, that's what I unfortunately think of, I guess.
I know. Well, his dad did. He was the one that sort of pioneered how to use children and what they really say and really do and really think in commercials. He's a master marketer, and he's just great with kids. And so Bill grew up under his tutelage. He worked for him for a while. And Bill has this wonderful same knack that his father has of storytelling. And so he worked under a very strong director, so he has good directing instincts. He's also got a great eye, so I've watched him as a photographer and a camera guy. I really respect him there. And he's able to do everything himself. He could write, he could direct, he can produce, he can edit. And so because he has all that other experience, it makes him a super well-rounded partner. So not only was he editing, but I would try out just about everything I would write on him and say, this is what I'm writing. What do you think about this? He would say, well, what are you imagining here? Well, what I imagine is this. And we worked in a collaborative way where, it's a real give and take. He spoke a lot into the writing. He spoke a lot into, the visuals that we would use. But he also was super encouraging to me and empowering to me. Where some people may see that I was floundering and take control and enact their vision, he didn't. He worked with me to help me crystallize what he has heard me tell him before. And so he was far more than just an editor. And for this project, that was what I really needed.
It sounded like he was kind of like a guide almost, helping you.
He was an Indian guide, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I felt very supported, very empowered, very challenged. The great thing about Bill, we have a good chemistry in that. I'll say I want to do this, or here is my idea. And Bill will be like, okay, well, what about this? And sometimes he'll say, no, I don't like that, or no, I don't agree with that. But if I push back, he'll rethink. So one time he was like, he edited something, and I said, well, can you do this? And his first answer was no in his head, but then he's like, well, let me try. And he did it, and it worked out better. So in a sense, he trusted my storytelling instincts, and it pushed him to try something he didn't normally think would work. That was in relation to our story about Willie Kellerman. And when you guys see the film about Willie Kellerman, oh my goodness, he didn't think Willie should be included. He didn't think it was a very powerful scene. I was imagining something in my head that I thought was super powerful. I challenged him to figure it out, and he did. So, we worked collaboratively like that, and I do think that worked well for our project in the end. But you know how you were talking about you can take some footage and 10 stories could come out?
Yeah.
I did have a moment of realization where I realized I had incredible power. And that was when I had somebody say something, but I really wanted him to say something else. And so I was like, I can make him say whatever I want. and that's why Bill told me when he was working on Overcomer, they had this whole edit where
Overcomer is a new film coming out from the Kendrick
Brothers. Yeah.
Okay.
So he was working on Overcomer, and I think the editors put together something like that where they took situations and scenes and they edited them to be like nothing like the people said or did. And
this just to be for fun?
Yeah, this was for fun. And at the end it's like, don't mess with the editors.
or you'll get this.
Right, because they have incredible power. Right. So, yeah, it's kind of cool.
So I can't imagine that all director-editor relationships work like, in this collaborative, way. I'm sure there's got to be tension and butting of heads and that sort of thing. Did you ever, in your 6 weeks working with him in his garage, ever get to a point where like you had to lay down the law and say, this is my film, or just
never? But that's because we're both people pleasers. I think, and we value the other so much. I mean, I cannot say enough how much I feel valued and respected and supported by Bill, and how I respect, support, and value him as well. And so that mutual respect, we may have a different way of seeing things, but the way we communicate about that is super healthy and positive. And so I've never felt belittled or, anything by Bill or disdained and he has good boundaries. Like he is super good about his boundaries. And he, I'll give you a perfect example. He wrote me this morning and told me he was taking the morning off, which I was like, what? Are you freaking kidding me? My guess is he's going to see Endgame with his wife. He told me he was taking the morning off and taking his wife to a movie. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And then I wrote him back and I was like, did you see my email? Did you see my email this morning? And he didn't respond to me. And so I
just told you I'm taking
exactly. And so he'll come back and he says, I'll be in my chair at noon. We'll talk at noon and I will have accepted his boundaries and not be mad about it and stuff like that. So he's just a super healthy person, and that makes our relationship work. But I would say, to answer your question, I think every director-editor relationship is unique to the people in it. I do not think there is one relationship fits all.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned this in the last podcast about, having people, how'd you phrase that, with the right metal?
Made of the right metal.
Made of the right metal, and so not just in your family and support system, but the people you choose to work with.
Yeah.
And also, there are disadvantages of not having a studio to back you, not having money. But on the other hand, you have no one breathing down your neck telling you can't do this.
Well, that's totally why I didn't take investors.
Oh, I see.
I knew if any fiduciary relationship, it's like marriage, right? So when you go to work in a production thing and you have contracts and stuff like that, it's akin to a marriage. And that's even heightened when there's money involved. And I watched project after project get embroiled in these legal battles over money stuff. And I was like, I don't want that pressure. I have enough pressure everywhere else. And I know if I have people invested, they're expecting a return, that's going to put undue pressure on me. And so I chose to self-fund and to take donations as opposed to having investors or corporations or any other studio involved.
Because it's not just them getting a return on their money, it's they probably have a vision, and when they
Right.
see it's not in alignment, and hey, I'm giving you money.
Then it becomes arguments, yeah.
Right.
Our donors have been so incredibly supportive. I mean, that's the thing. They buy into my vision. They, they see what we're doing. They want to be a part, and they're contributing to that out of the graciousness of their hearts. And so it's just a different buy-in.
When you said you decided not to get investors, did you consider that at one point and then come to that conclusion?
I had a partner early on who's like, no, you can't go the nonprofit route. You have to go the investor route. And I was like, and I even had somebody that was willing to give us $10,000 to invest. I'm like, I didn't like the person that was willing to give us the money. I didn't trust him. And even though that money was there and it would get us started, I didn't want it. And so, I had to make a decision early on how I wanted to go about things.
Well, let's shift gears for a minute. When we came in today, we had Jason and I had an opportunity to see Act 1 of the film. So this is very exciting to hear all about the film and see little clips, but actually see the opening Act 1 of the movie. So very exciting. And having known you for years and hearing about this, and there's been amazing stories that have come from it, and you just kind of wonder, what is this going to look like, right?
Plus, I'm a first-time filmmaker, and you're like, you have to be a little scared that, like, does she really know what she's doing? Is this going to suck?
Right, and also at the same time, I don't have the exact same experience that you had, but I've made projects and people watched it, and you get that sick feeling of like, what if they hate it?
Yeah.
And then I tend to hate things more that I do than other people think about.
Yeah, you're so self-critical.
Right.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, I want Jason and I to kind of share a little bit.
I would like to hear
So Jason, what were your takeaways from seeing? It was like 15 minutes at the beginning of the film.
I mean, I've seen some parts of it from before, like we've seen clips, and to see it all come together and see the story really start to grow and just build to the point where I'm feeling tension and emotion and sadness and happiness all at the exact same time. It was a really interesting combination of emotions that I've rarely felt while watching other documentaries. Particularly just the gratefulness that comes through. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful piece, and I'm really glad you shared it with us at this stage. So, thank you.
Yeah, and that's just the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had said something about when you first watched it, you thanked me. Why did you thank me?
I'm just so glad this story is being told because, like, I always grew up with my parents, or my grandparents were Depression babies, and so I've always heard stories of them growing up and people who'd served coming back and honoring them in parades and everything, and to get to see it, even though it's a completely different culture and different country, but to see them still to this day honoring that sacrifice it was very moving. It was beautiful.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you.
So I've heard you share your story of how you got in this film many times. And that's the opening, is, that you weren't really familiar with D-Day and your son Hunter was in the Army and so forth. So I've heard it many times. And so to me, I had to okay, I got to hear this story again, right? Not it's a great story, but it's like, I've already heard this, so what's new here, right? And then you ask the question, why are people in France so thankful and showing this outpouring of love every year, decades now, right?
75 years later.
And so you ask this question, and all of a sudden that grabbed me, and then the question begins to be answered. Where these people from France, when they were little children when it happened, they're telling these stories, and I was surprised by what you said, the emotion of it, that it caught me off guard, that I was very moved by it. And the other thing too is you are a first-time filmmaker. And so it's kind of like you're like, well, we're going to take this with a grain of salt or whatever. And this looks sharp. It is
really does.
It is well done. And the other thing too is, so often when you don't notice something, it's kind of like a paint job. Like when you paint your house, no one really notices, wow, what a great paint job. But if you mess up,
they totally are like,
you can what happened here, right?
Right.
So if the lighting was bad or if the music was obnoxious or whatever, all of a sudden those things stand out. And one of the things that surprised me was how much I love the music, because in the middle of it, it occurred to me wait a second, who wrote the music? and is this the actual music? Because it wasn't this some guy that volunteered to do this? Like wasn't expecting it to be this good from a volunteer, right? So.
Oh my goodness, Jeff Kurtenacker from LA. He's a video game composer up to this point, but he's always wanted to compose for films. And he does have a fabulous story. I don't know if you've read his blog post, but it's called Scoring Freedom and Hope, I think, and it's on our website. But he talks about how he got involved. And it entailed hearing about this on the podcast, his wife saying you should call her. He did, and I responded right away. And it turned out that I was in Las Vegas at the time, and he was in LA. And so I was like, if you can drive over right now, we'll interview you. And he drove over for dinner at 7 p.m., 3 hours or 4 hours, had dinner with us, met. I loved him right away. And he drove all the way back, Wow. And, just his willingness to do that was amazing. But his giftedness has blown me away. Usually the way it traditionally works is that you have picture lock, then you hand it off to the composer to score the whole thing in one breath. We have asked Jeff all the way along to compose things and give us ideas without ever seeing the film.
Oh, wow.
And so he's had to do that, and then we've asked him to do it act by act. And so he's just kind of, and what you heard is not even, it's just it's just sort of the rough track synth version.
Got it.
He still has a lot to do to it to make it a full thing. But I mean, what you watched isn't color corrected. It doesn't have sound effects. There's still little pieces missing that we haven't finished. But what about the subtitles? Did you notice anything about the subtitles?
Great subtitles.
So we've got to give Michelle Coupé, our producer in France, props for that. She's been doing that all the way along. She had to, translate all of the French stuff into English, and then she had to take my VO and translate it into French. So it's a completely subtitled film. When I'm speaking, it's French. When our French people are speaking, it's English. Mm-hmm. Did they bother you or anything like that?
No, but subtitles don't normally bother me anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I don't like it when things are dubbed. Mm-hmm. So I really love that you could still hear the emotions and the hesitations in the original recording and still read what they're saying, because I don't understand French,
right,
but still feel what they're feeling.
Yeah. Isn't French beautiful? Yeah. I love that they're speaking their language, and it's just wonderful to hear. Okay, so the most important question, did you want to see Act 2?
Oh, absolutely. I was a little disappointed when it ended. Because it was leading up to something like, what's going to happen next?
Well, just for those of you who, Act 1 is basically just, D-Day. It's like the euphoric stuff of D-Day. But we do go from euphoria into other things. So we are taking you on an emotional journey. It blesses me that you said this was emotional, because my hope is that you will feel deeply the emotions of these people as you watch this.
No, and I really think it was the people who were speaking, telling those stories, and like Jason said, hearing their voice and everything is what got me the most. Mm-hmm. So I can't wait to hear more.
And the fact that we've been hearing about it for 2 years now, and it's still got us.
Right.
Yeah.
Is really telling.
That is so super exciting to me. Bill says he's spent so much time with these people. He's like, I'm in love with these people. I'm like, welcome to my world. Like, we have fallen in love with these French people. They're just amazing. And he's like, I'm going to get over there for the premiere, and I'm going to be running up to them, hugging me. They've never met me. They're going to think I'm a freak. But I'm so glad to hear that. Yay.
All right. Well, hey, thanks, everyone, for listening to Documentary First, where we believe everyone has a story to tell, and you can be the one to tell it.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks, everybody. Bye, Jason.
Goodbye, Jason.
Bye, everybody.